How you doing?
I'm well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Good to be home, to be honest.
I bet, mate. How's the transition back home been?
Uh, all right, bit surreal, really. Just really eating everything, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was got down to about 65 kilo. I think I got home, I was about 69 kilos. So now I'm just eating every major fast food group going.
Oh,
Kebabs,
shit.
hamburgers, you name it.
Yeah, mate. Well, you
So
look healthy. You look happy.
yeah, good. Handled the prison bit quite well. There's no problems at all, really. We obviously saying that we got starved, beaten, electrocuted, but generally I had a better understanding of the sort of stages of that because I'd had training in the British Army. So I sort of knew the first part could be the most dangerous, and then obviously if I got through that without injury, then it could get a little easier. Nothing can train you for pain.
Yeah.
Obviously, the pain was horrendous. The beatings, the electrocution. Um, but I knew that it would get slightly easier, and also I knew that we had some sort of value. So quite early, they wanted to swap us for Victor Medvedchuk and stuff. So I knew we'd got some value in that aspect of it. So I was sort of 60–70% sure we'd be okay, but you just don't know. But I knew DPR evolved, and if they were, they wanted to shoot you, they'd shoot you 2 months earlier in a park somewhere,
Yeah.
So that being that, it's but the guys had a good sense of humor, so we had a good sense of humor, and that kept us through a lot of it.
Did you say the guys or the guards?
The guys,
Oh,
well, to be honest, towards the end, some of the guards we had a bit of a rapport with. We developed some time and things you have to do to sort of stay alive. They got us some tea and sugar, and they were open to sort of, if we can get cigarettes, we could barter with them and get some stuff. So generally, but the guys had a good sense of humour
hmm.
all the way through, and that sort of humour, and that black humour keeps you going, even in the worst times. So
Yeah. Oh, mate. And you said that you knew fairly early on they wanted to swap you for Victor Medvedchuk. Uh,
yeah, that's right.
right. I
They
didn't know you knew earlier.
Yeah, we knew quite quickly into when we were captured, they wanted to swap us. We were made to ring the Foreign Office of the UK, do an appeal message to Boris Johnson. But generally, they told me straight away that we want to swap you for Victor Medvedchuk. And his wife was actually, we watched a video from his wife, and they showed us that. And then we saw her appealing, mention our names, and we had to then start appealing to be swapped for Victor Medvedchuk. So we knew that quite early, which again gave me hope and positivity, really, about getting exchanged. But at that time we were in the isolation cells, so and what we called the Blacksite, which was very much a site, for those that don't know, a site we don't know the address of. It's like where all the bad shit happens, and we were in a car sort of underground in this black site, and I never saw Aslin through the whole time until we went to psychiatrist evaluation before the trial. That was the first time I saw him, but they told me that he'd been captured. And I never saw him at this place, but we had a couple of people turn up and feed us information and new news about a month after I was taken. The NGOs got captured. They come in with some good news, because for about 4 weeks after I was captured, I thought Ukraine might be suffering, because obviously they were making quite fast gains, the Russians, at the time. So we didn't even know there was a Ukraine still. So we were just, me and two Ukrainians were just thinking, well, what are we going to do? When are we going to go? What's going to happen? Are we going to go to Russia? Just thinking that constantly. But when they came and said, no, Ukraine's fighting, and they're actually doing really well, and they've sunk a ship, and we were in the cells sort of dancing around. Yeah,
Fuck.
there is a Ukraine, So we had to take things into stages, But yeah, the Black Site was just a nasty place where it all happened, and we got transferred just before the trial. So it was. This prison wasn't so bad, to be honest. It was. We got 3 meals a day. We were treated how we should be treated. We got showers once a week, haircuts. come in with a medical team every day to make sure we were all right. And it was total contrast from where we were sort of previous. So literally I was starved for 50 days, went to this new prison, just real malnourished. Even the prosecutor said to me, you don't even look like your Facebook pictures. I think we'll move you to another prison.
Oh, shit.
And I was thinking, shit, you know. And when I got to the prison, everyone went, you look like shit. And you could see the rib cage, you know, when you get really, really skinny, and you could see the ripples of your chest, and my elbows had inflated, and I'd lost so much weight. You could see my hip bones were just protruding out. I was just thinking, my God. And Dylan just said, you look like shit.
Wow.
You know? And he said, one night's sleep, you look better after one night's sleep. And I didn't eat food properly, so we'd had bread for 50 days. I didn't even know you could live on bread for 50 days. So it's like we literally had the first meal and just threw it up everywhere in the toilet. And then we got dysentery really quickly at this new prison. It just didn't stop the health issues. I thought I'd die of probably starvation long before I'd ever get shot, to be honest.
Yeah. And how's your health now? How's it tracking back?
All right, I've got a bit of arthritis in my hips and my back. They said it's been brought on by the malnutrition and the diet and no sun and vitamin deficiency. So I'm just having some treatment for that at the moment. Mentally, I'm good. Sleep like a baby every night. But yeah, it's just getting, I mean, the first week at home, I was just walking through the grass barefooted, you know, just feeling the rain and the wind was just lovely. Being stuck in a cell 23 hours a day for near on 6 months. And we were deployed. People forget we were deployed. We just happened to be deployed when they came across and started the war. So we were deployed in December the 12th last year. So we'd already had 2 months in trenches before the war started. So, you know, we've been at this a very long time. My wife gets here this week, so I haven't seen her since January. So it's going to be quite emotional time. Yeah, this week's going to be quite an emotional time. It was quite nice. Friday, the embassy gave us a bit of a party, got us all together, all the families together, which was nice, the Ukrainian embassy to do that. But generally, we've just been thanking everybody since we've been back, really. It's too many people to thank, you know.
Yeah, I bet, mate. It's good to see that you're home. And how did your family take, I guess, the news of you being released and then your return?
Well, they didn't know, and then they said the Foreign Office said, "Could we bring you at the early hours of the morning?" And they were going, "Well, something's going on." And then suddenly they just said, "Can you get down to London in the early hours of the morning?" And they were just ecstatic, and they didn't want to. They couldn't really announce our freedom until we got out of Russian airspace. So we didn't actually know we were freed until the door shut on the plane. You know, even we knew we were in Russia. We knew we were pretty much being taken somewhere else. Suddenly we just see lots of guys, you know, looking like Saudis walking around, thinking we've been sold on. Still, we didn't really understand. Saw a guy that looked like Roman Abramovich, the former Chelsea owner, in the airport. And I said to Andy, that looks like Roman Abramovich. He's going, piss off, what's Roman Abramovich going to be doing here? You know? And then we get on the plane and they say, it's okay, you're safe, you know? And the door shut. And Roman came around and sort of said, you don't look like Roman Abramovich. And he said, that's because I am. Wow. Really, what are you doing here? Why did you buy West Ham? I said. He said, because Chelsea was closer to his house.
Oh, fuck. And what was he doing there?
And then it all started. Sorry?
And what was he doing there?
They're doing some humanitarian work. Obviously, he's got sanctions. He had to sell Chelsea. And the money they raised from that is going in towards helping the war victims. And somehow he was part of, I may never know, but he was a part of the process getting it into... to the Saudis involved, a neutral country, and getting us out. So, you know, I'm forever thankful. It's being a West Ham fan, it's hard bitter pill to swallow, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, where does your loyalties lie now?
Yeah, Chelsea for no, I can't say that. I'll just get a load of West Ham people text me.
Mate, that gives you a whole new meaning to like being a diehard supporter, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, I just got kids. Thank you, Roman. But you know, I'm still West Ham. But yeah, it's just it was an amazing journey. And we got taken to Saudi, so it's been an amazing journey for 2 weeks. And my family just ecstatic with me being home. So You know, it's brought us all very much closer together. The guys have still got, you know, group chats, and we're still very close. You know, we picked each other up when we were down, and there was a good morale considering where we were and what was being thrown about, and possibly, you know, death at the end of the day.
Yeah,
but it was a very scary time, you know.
I bet, mate. And I sort of just want to go back to that, like the first days of the war, and even back to, you said, you know, you'd been on deployment, and this is what a lot of people, I guess, don't understand, was you'd speak to the Ukrainian soldiers and they're like, the war didn't start on the 24th of February. The war started in 2014.
It did, yeah.
And where I want to
We're
sort
forever
of
getting told.
Sorry,
go on.
No, you go.
Delay is we're forever getting told we're volunteers. So hold on, we've been here 5 years, and we were doing teaching work before we were transferred to the Marines. The Marines made life easy for us to get our residencies and citizenships. We both lived there. There was a very public interview we did with Sky, the battalion wanted us to do before the war, you know, we'd been working here, learned the language. Myself learned Russian. I think Aiden speaks Russian as well. My Ukrainian is still very bad, but I lived in Mariupol where a lot of people speak Russian, but identify as being Ukrainian. People don't understand this situation very well. But I'd lived there 5 years. So, you know, for me, it was a no-brainer. You know, somebody did say we could get you out of Mariupol if you want. I said, no, my home's here, you know. I got a house on the left bank. I had to watch get blown up. My wife had to move further into the country with friends, and a lot of the Ukrainians evacuated Mariupol. And it was a no-brainer. I'd worked with guys for 3 years. I was going to stay, you know, and until the end. And literally, the bombing increased, the artillery increased at least 2 weeks before. The drones were a lot more advanced than just the year before. Suddenly they were dropping ordnance at night. You know, never had this problem before. Suddenly they were coming in with drones and dropping VOGs at night. One of my friends got hit just before the war, so he got taken to hospital where a VOG, while he was cutting up some wood, came in and just dropped one on him. You know, we were at this was my 3rd tour in Ukraine, so we'd been at this for a very long time. We didn't come specifically for the war. We just fell back on a teaching job, and then I transferred because it just was made easier joining the Marines, because we could get citizenship quite easy, and I still believe that it gives something to get something in return. So, you know, part of me, it was great. I could fall back on a job that I did a long time ago, because I was 9 years in the British Army. It's not like I'd had no training. I'd been working out there 2 years prior, so transferred to the Marines, which was great. You know, had a great time. 48, I was 47, 48. I was parachuting, adapt to work, still fit, you know, and ready to go. So I felt I could give something for 3 years just to get my citizenship.
Yeah. Oh, mate, that's, you know, that's, I guess you take something, give it back, and that's, you know, citizenships. I know there's a lot to do with the American military like that as well. And that really, it goes around the idea that you are a foreign mercenary. And it's just, and that's just untrue. And it's funny when you hear guys like yourself too, especially say yourself being ex-British Army, say things like, well, what I got paid in the British Army compared to what I got paid in the Marines, I'm not working here for the money. If it was for the money, it's definitely not that I'd go and work for Garda World.
No, I had a conversation very much with would be a sort of a Russian policeman, maybe FSB, who knows? And he said exactly that. And I said to him, look, I could get more for working on the garbage in the UK than I can working for Ukraine Army. But they had his benefits working in Ukraine Army. You know, the cost of living in Ukraine is very much lower. And the Army is still one of the best paid jobs. When you go on the sector, you get more money. So it was actually a very good paid job in Ukraine. And my wife worked as well. So we actually did very well. It was a comfortable life we had in Mariupol. So for us, it worked. But yeah, it's you don't join for the money, and it was just a way of life. I prefer the climate in Ukraine. The people are seem to be more family orientated. It's less of a rush in Ukraine. You come back to England like now, it's very much now, power, competition, small. You know, you go to Ukraine, it's a little bit more relaxed and nicer climate and nicer place. Not so competitive, I would say, would be the best way to put it.
I can completely agree with the family oriented. People sort of invite you in. It's more this like community based.
Yeah, you can be a complete stranger.
Yeah. I even feel like the living situation, and Australia is probably even different again to the UK. Like in Australia, everyone lives in a standalone house. There's no like, okay, maybe in the Sydney you might live in an apartment or a flat. But it's not like that in Australia. Like most of Australia is not Sydney. No one lives in like communal type living. You have your own house and your own yard and your own whatever.
That's it, yeah.
And something I actually really enjoyed for my time, my sort of 6 month short stint in Ukraine before the war, was it's almost so much more communal, that people are so much more, like you said, slow, and almost bring you in as family, and there's that, I guess, too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's, I mean, we got quite a close family here, and I'm quite lucky in that. The support network I've got since I've been back has been amazing, amazing friends and family. And obviously, I've just realizing what people did and what work they put in to get us out, which we had no idea. I mean, one of the things Roman said, a press woman said, was she gave us some good advice. She just said, look, you really need to deal with the media. And we said, why? What's going on? She said, well, you guys are generating some press and some media. We said, well, how much? And she went, lots. And we went, well, how much is lots? She went, world lots, and we were like, we just had no idea, no idea. So we were like, so she was giving us coaching on the plane on the way to Saudi, you know? And it was from then we realized that we just had to play catch up with everything everybody's done, from our local politicians. And then you realize that family has brought us all closer together, this whole thing. So there is that. We are very close here, but England's got that very, it's very competitive. The job market's very competitive now. If you go for a job, you're competing with 50, 60 people just for one job, and you go to Ukraine, it's very different. And they live to work in England, and in Ukraine, it's very much work to live, which is a nicer way. But I best describe it as I can go down to the beach in Ukraine and light a fire and fish, and it doesn't cost me anything, and I'm not going to get a visit from the police.
Yes.
If I do that in England, I'd be paying 10 quid to park on the beach, go down to, then I'd have to, some bailiff or someone coming around, or the police come around and say, well, you're lighting a fire, and you put that out, you don't have to worry about that. Right? Yeah. It's got some good points. So,
absolutely, mate.
It's all part of defending the country that's not mine, but, working with the guys and having a life there, this is what we were defending. We didn't want to be a part of Russia.
Yeah. And how strongly do you still feel about that message of defending the country? As, there's been a lot of talk in the press recently about, as this war, gets into the mid 200 days, okay, what is it time to do this? Is it time? And that's Western press saying this. Of course, Ukraine is standing firm on, no matter what this, but there's a lot of people ask me, I see it through my things, like, why are we still giving money to this, blah, blah, blah. And it seems like the profile pictures that were the Ukrainian flag are starting to change back to something else now. There's that lump.
The interest is,
how do you still feel about that?
It's a funny one, because I've had these debates, and people are obviously quite rightly worried about nuclear war and possibly escalate. But what I tell people, that you can't trust Russia. We've had this with the Minsk agreement. We've had all these peace talks prior to this war starting in February. And, these peace talks, he literally lied and still funded, still brought in troops, still invaded, same with Crimea, still, he's got a proven track record of lying. I think you're going to have to change the leadership in Russia to actually have some sort of try and get some sort of peace process start some dialogue for a peace process. I think you're going to have to change the leadership in Russia. I still say that now. I don't hate Russians. I just hate Russian foreign policy, you know. And by extension of that is the army that's in Ukraine. So with that being that, I still push the agenda for Ukraine where I can. I may have to go it a different way, but I still support them. Obviously, I'm married to it as well. So, you know, it's there every day for us. They can't walk away from it. You know, and they're if somebody, let's say Scotland invaded England and took Liverpool, would we start a peace process, you know, while they're still holding Liverpool? Of course we wouldn't. We want to take back Liverpool, Manchester, Yorkshire. We want to take all that back before we ever started. They're exactly the same. Yeah. You know, and I've seen the displaced people. I've seen the communities have had to move out of those areas back into Ukraine. But I've also seen the flip side of it. I'm probably one of the few people that have seen the arguments for, you know, the guys that want to go back to Russia, you know, the Donetsk people, for which we had long debates with some of the prisoners about this, you know, and their views. And they're divided in Donetsk. So, you know, the DPR are divided. They wanted a individual republic when all this started. Now they've been told they have to go to Russia. Well, there's some people there that have been in prison that want a republic. They don't want to be a republic, but they don't want to be a part of Ukraine. They want to be a republic. Now they're being told that they're having to be Russian, which goes against why it started in the first place. So there's a lot of divided people actually within DPR and Donetsk. So you've got three sorts. You've got the people that want to go to Ukraine who are stuck in Donetsk and Lugansk. You've got the people that want a republic have been told they're are now going to be Russia. And then you've got the Russian element that want to be a part of Russia. So you've got three sort of elements there that I didn't really know until I went and I did some time in Donetsk, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of political problems there and so many political prisoners within actually Donetsk. It's phenomenal.
Right.
They don't have a platform where they can elect anybody. So the minute they put anything critical on social media, they're jailed for 3 years. It's just crazy.
And were these people the ones you speaking to with that opinion in the Donetsk prison? Were they also political prisoners within where you were?
Yeah, there were some. Yeah, there were some political prisoners that we talked to who said, you know, they're very identified with Russia, but they can't have a platform to air anything. They don't have an election process. So then they're jailed because they put something on the internet. And one of the guys I speak to is doing 3 years for it. You know, it's crazy. And from what I saw, they were just one of the things they put on social media the other day was that I was in Bosnia and it could be quite strong, but I was in Bosnia and in the early 90s, you know, saw the ethnic cleansing was going on. And one of the debates I had in the prison was that, you know, the Americans got a great phrase for it. You can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. But generally, I saw what was going on in the 90s. It's very much similar to what's going on in Ukraine, the ethnic cleansing of Ukrainians from Ukrainian held areas by Russia. It's very much, for me, like that. It's very reminiscent of the early 90s, what's happening in Bosnia and stuff. So it's no more than a land grab. There's a lot more to it than that, but it's no more than a land grab, a land push into Mariupol, Donetsk. And that's why you can't trust Putin, really.
And that was something that you were willing to, you know, lay your life down for.
Absolutely. I mean, while I was there, the narrative changed all the time. So when I was captured, it was you're a Nazi. You're a Nazi. So I'm not Nazi. You know, we're not Nazis. And then it changed to terrorist. Suddenly I was a terrorist. And then by the end of it, I was a Nazi terrorist mercenary. It just kept stacking up. And I just kept saying, you know, how can I be all these things? You know, it's just crazy. You've got no proof. And we weren't allowed to give our side of it. Argument. They said they'd appointed us an attorney. Well, she didn't even see me once we went out to Mariupol, but she worked with a prosecutor. She was part of the system. So we weren't actually allowed to get our contracts and our information to be able to defend ourselves. So that's when I knew it was just a sham trial. And Brahim, the Moroccan, was probably the strongest of us all. He was 100% sure that, you know, we weren't going to be shot from the minute we were captured to the minute to the end. And he's like 5 foot and he's a big fighter, you know, he didn't stop talking all the way through, and you need people like that. And he was just staunch, no, not going to happen, not going to happen, not going to happen, all the way through. But yeah, it's easier looking back on it, I guess, and thinking nothing's going to happen. But we weren't really sure at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I'd say, 60%, 70% sure that we weren't going to be sure, but you just didn't know.
And how did it feel?
Broken down the talks.
How did it feel when that sentence was passed to you that you'll be facing the death penalty? How did you feel when that was said? Because even if you're 60% sure, you got to be thinking, oh, fucking hell.
Well, yeah. To be honest, at the time, I thought, I hope there's an appeal process, was what I was thinking. There's got to be an appeal process. So going through the court, there's got to be an appeal process. It was only when we got back to the cell, maybe 2 or 3 days later, that it just sort of sunk in. You know, just watched my own death sentence. And I mean, I've never done anything wrong with the law. But if you're going to get your first conviction, I couldn't think better than 24 years and 2 death sentences, you know?
Yeah.
And we were just sitting there going, I can't believe it. I've never been in court before. I've never done anything. How can we end up with a death sentence? Not to mention plus a life sentence as well on top of it. How on earth does that happen? You know, we were in the Ukrainian army. And it was about 2 or 3 days later where it sort of really could come to a sort of low point for a bit, thinking, we're never going to get out of here. We're never going to get out of here. And at that point, you know, you need your friends, you need the guys around you to sort of pick you up a bit and sort of have a reality check. And for me, Brahim and Dylan were the ones that were giving me sort of the reality check. I could bounce off them and the Swedish guy as well. I tell you, see, they were really good guys to sort of bounce off. And I could talk to them and sort of get a reality check. We discussed things most nights. We had an hour walk every day, but we used it as like a meeting point where we discussed the events. Anyone got any new news? We're all in like different paddocks. So basically, we would not be seeing each other. We'd stay in the confines of who's in the cell, but we're over the wall. We'd hear the next cell come in, and it'll be the Americans or the Brahim and the Swede that were living together. And then we'd just have a big, what we called an O group, a meeting every night, and try and formulate a plan for the next guys about delaying the court process, maybe giving the guys like me, Brahim and Aiden, more chance to live and more time for Ukraine to make the exchange. So we sat up most nights looking through the codes of Donetsk that they'd given us, trying to work out a way we could get the courts delayed. And once we'd got a plan, I believe the Croatian John Harding, Dylan, and went to the courts and actually got a month and a half recess on the courts from the plan. So we were fighting from inside the cell, but I had to fight a different way. So really, if the attitude was, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down fighting, and then whoever makes it out is going to tell the story. And that was our mantra. You know, Dylan and Andy probably weren't going to get the death sentence, but they were waiting for their verdict at the end of it. But we'd got a month recess. So when we were freed, they don't know what verdict they would have got. We pretty much assumed that Dylan and the NGO and Andy were okay. They wanted to send Andy back to on an exchange to show his arm and look at what we've done for your guys. We fixed him. But generally, you know, if we didn't make it out, they were going to tell the story. So we had to sit there every day saying, look, it could get darker. It could get really, really dark. How? You know, we're explaining them, if anything happens to us, you've got to take the story out. And that's how we worked every day. So we had sort of blip days, but really it didn't linger because we were then fighting from inside the prison, trying to work out the next move, how we could sort of delay these processes to give Ukraine more time. But and the backdrop was that Ukraine were actually coming closer to the prison. So they were actually bombing the prison sometimes. And in 3 months, we really noticed them come quite close to the prison.
Right. So Ukraine was shelling in or at the prison.
Yeah. When we were at the second prison, there was no shelling at the start. 3 months later, fast forward, they were coming in 50, 100 meters from the prison some days.
Right.
And the rounds were coming in. So
what were they trying to hit
the prisoners were, pardon?
And what were they trying to hit there?
They've moved the artillery around the prison. Felt like we were like a bit like a human shield
Right.
at some point. They moved the artillery around the prison and in the residential areas. So they were firing out from there, and then Ukraine were trying to hit these artillery pieces coming into. So they were coming quite close to the prison, these rounds. And then basically we could see that the advances that were being made by Ukraine, with our own eyes over a 3-month period. And, we were cheering the minute those rounds came in. So it's crazy thinking about it. But when we heard those first rounds come in to near the Ukrainian rounds come in, we were just dancing around a cell going, we're Ukraine's here, It was just, and then we were counting the distance, and then like you do, and we were saying, well, they're about 3 or 4K away. And then we thought we could run that. And then we thought at one point we were going to get liberated before we were ever going to get exchanged. So we were making decisions about who would go, how we would go, which routes we'd take from what we could see. We were looking at those sorts of things and assessing the situation every day. And the minute some new news came in, we'd look at it, and analyse it as best we could. But we overanalyzed everything because everything was like the slightest little bit of news. We'd, overanalyze it and try and work out what we could get from that bit of news, But we often heard the prisoners talking, they were unhappy with the radio broadcast because the radio broadcast in Russian weren't telling them what they wanted to hear or telling them the actual picture of what was happening, because they could see Ukraine coming closer. But the radio was just saying everything was all right, everything's fine, Russia, we will win, We fought as best we could from the prison, and so we didn't dwell on any of the negative side of it,
Yeah. And since being out, have you suffered from like any Stockholm syndrome of being there with those guys and working on that stuff?
No, not really. For me, I'm looking at Mariupol. We never got a chance to process Mariupol. We lost 60% of our platoon. We lost our BTRs. Friends of mine died. Mariupol was a real bun fight, if you know what I mean. We'd got a mixture of guys, and this was going to be their first conflict. So for me, on my 9th war tour, I was quite seasoned in that respect. And I remember having a conversation with my platoon commander saying, I think ignorance is bliss, because the guys hadn't really understood that they were working to completely surround us. And I was saying to him, I don't know how we're going to get out of this. And he just said to me, all I want to see is my wife again. And I was like, where are we going to go? And he went, anywhere's better than here. And this was our position at Ilajar at the steelworks in Mariupol. We just get pounded and pounded and pounded by, planes, mortars, artillery, everything that was coming, SPG rockets. We had a helicopter at one point come in, Russian helicopter firing. We had excursion by recce. Their recce units were coming in, so we had to fend off them whenever they came in. Major firefights with enemy that's like 15, 20 meters away. And then towards the end, it was getting more like Saving Private Ryan. The tanks are coming in through the walls, and it was just becoming just what you see in the films. That's the only way I could describe it. It was just, tanks were blowing holes in walls to make room so they can get their guys, the Russians could get their guys through to new areas. It was just crazy. In the end, they just give us, Zelensky obviously said you could surrender, and we opted to try and escape and evade and get out through the first lines. And then I was captured about 2 hours outside Mariupol. Tried not to surrender, but really, we were up against it. We hadn't had food for 2 weeks. We had probably about 200-kilometer tab to friendly lines. And then you have to get through all the Russian lines before that, get out of Mariupol. We were up against it from the word go. And I just got captured about 2 hours outside Mariupol. It was 2 hours walk. It wasn't probably 2 hours. I was sort of zigzagging and diving in buildings. But about 2 hours later, after the evacuation, I got captured in a building just outside of Mariupol, Ilacha.
So you gave it a shot. You didn't surrender as far as, yep, okay, on this date we're all going out, put our hands up. You tried the great escape.
Soon tried to get out. There was a decision made: you could either surrender and try and surrender and then take your chances, or you can try and E out. And my platoon commander wanted us to get to a position about 130 kilometers outside of Mariupol. We went for it. So they were captured, but we got ambushed on the way out on the extraction. There was a lot of casualties, and the platoon got split up, and I was left with some casualties and a medic. And we found more casualties on the route. And one of the hardest decisions I had to make was to sort of say to her that I'm going to leave because I'm British. I can't get caught. The casualties were they were never going to make it. They were just couldn't walk. One guy on a stretcher. And I knew the medic was there and she would look after them. But I had to sit there and try and go once around a perimeter to try and find food and water because we had no food and water for 2 weeks. We were running on empty anyway. We were just eating bags of sugar and drinking what water we could find anywhere. So it was pretty bad at that point. So I knew I had to do like a 200-kilometer tab, E&E running on empty. I was always going to be up against it. But they actually caught me looking for food in a building just outside Mariupol, I was trying to find some food for myself, and I left the guys back in Mariupol. But I tried to get out. But by that time, I'd lost my platoon, and they got captured not far from me, to be honest. I met them later in the prison.
All right.
Yeah, so one or two of them there. But my commander was released with me, so I was pretty happy. But we still don't know who's dead, who's alive, who's captured, really, because we got brought to the UK. So one of my biggest regrets is I didn't come back with the guys I was working with. Part of the deal, I think, was to bring us back to Saudi and then Saudi home, so back to Britain. So not much I can do about that, but yeah, I'm having some sort of chats with authorities and people about that, even though I don't think there's much wrong. Sleep like a baby, and I'm pretty good at the moment.
But, and how did it go?
These can materialise later on, as you know, they can materialise later on. So
of course,
better to be safe than sorry,
Yeah, of course. And how did that go when you got captured, when they finally got you? Can you just run us through how that sort of scenario happened while you're looking for food?
It's single most scariest thing ever in my life, ever. I knew from training, I'd done SEER and stuff, and I knew from my training that the first part would be the most dangerous part, and were they right? It's first of all, I've got a guy who looks more scared than me, a young Russian or DPR guy who's just eyes wide. He's thinking, what the hell have I got there? I'd said in Russian, I'm English, don't shoot, which already got them aware of who I was. And then they were pretty much looking for me. But these guys specifically weren't, they had no idea. But they were straight on the phone to the commander who took me to their commander, who then pretty much sort of said, who are you? Took all the details off me. And then these lovely boys came looking like very Spetsnazed up. And one of them just came in and stabbed me in the leg. Hey. Yeah, literally. Just and he went, oops. And I was screaming in pain. And they pulled all my trousers and my T-shirts. They were looking for tattoos. Meanwhile, my leg was flapping. And then basically they took me to I'm sort of cutting it down a bit because it's gone for ages. But they took me to another place, which was like a police station of some sorts, which then while I was bagged and hooded and bound, they took me to like a shower unit, which I thought, I'm in for it here, because as soon as I saw the floor tiles and the shower tiles and the wet room, I just thought, that's it, I'm a dead man. And that's probably the most single scared I've ever been. They put my fingers up to paddles, started with my thumbs, and then just started to electrocute me for fun, go through all my stuff. I'd managed to ditch my phone before I was captured, which was quite good, because there was a pond I was just passing, and when they fired a warning shot, I was able to drop it in. I knew I was outnumbered straight away, so I ducked down behind this thing, dropped it in the pond, and lost my phone. But it meant they were quizzing me about where it was, because I still had the battery charger on me, which is a bit of a rookie mistake. So they're going, "Where's your phone?" And I was going, "I've lost it. I don't know where it is." And they were electrocuting me for that. Pretty much beating me after that. About 4 times they electrocuted me in total. Between my thumb and my little finger, they moved it as well and put wet rags around my fingers. But then beat me probably about 20 minutes and tasered me as well. Some guy came in and gave me a mock execution as well, stuck a 9mm on the back of my head and told me that, he's going to kill me now, pushed me into the floor, for which I didn't make any sound because I knew it would be worse. And then he pistol whipped me and went, "Only joking." And I was thinking, all the time I could hear someone on the phone, because I speak a little Russian there, could hear someone on the phone saying, "Yeah, we're taking him. Somebody's interested in him. He's someone of interest." And I was out the door within maybe what seemed like 30 minutes. I was out the door on the way to Donetsk, where I met, sort of went to the Blacksites, as we call it, where I was introduced to people there. So it did get a little easier after that, but it's the most single scariest point I've ever, anything I've ever done. It's like, you don't want to go through that again. So none of the questions had any sort of, there wasn't any relevance to the questions. It was just like, who are you? They knew who I was. They'd have my passport right in front of them. They were looking at me on social media, trying to track me down on there while they were electrocuting me. So it was, who are you? Bzz, and the power of that electric just went straight through you. Even with a sliced leg, I was still just standing up, not even feeling a leg. It's just immensely, immensely painful. The next morning, my legs just inflated to far bigger than they normally were. And then when I pulled my sort of thermals off, last remaining bits they didn't cut off, pull my thermals off, I was actually bleeding through the capillaries on my leg, where they'd electrocuted me, and I was just bleeding from the leg through the pressure of that. So it was very, very painful, but my legs were like huge in the morning, and they sort of died down. But after that, the electrocution sort of died down. I needed once after on my ear, a little one on my ear, which wasn't so powerful as the first ones, but it's still enough to nip you and get you talking. But it wasn't as bad. But I think for me, somebody asked me yesterday, what was the worst bit? And I said, the starvation is the worst bit. The pain is quite quick, and the interrogations are over fairly quickly, and you can recover from that. But starvation, I'm a big foodie, massive foodie. So, I was just dreaming about food every minute of every day with everybody else. And if you've not had any food for, proper food for 3-4 weeks, your brain starts playing tricks on you. Your taste buds start kicking out the same tastes, even though you've not had. If I thought about a kiwi, my taste buds would start thinking like I'm eating kiwi, and I could get away. And after about 4 weeks, it sort of dies off. But starvation is the worst. You're constantly hungry, and you do anything to get food. It's just, for me, that's the worst.
Yeah. So after that site where the wet room where you're getting beaten, you go to the black site, as you call it. Is that like a KGB, like black site?
It's NGB is like the Donetsk. I think it's the Ministry of Internal Affairs, I believe. So they're pretty much like the FSB of Donetsk in a way. But then the FSB guys are far more professional. We didn't mess with them at all. Not that we messed with the MGB really, but we knew who they were. The MIB FSB, we knew who they were because they were there for like 2 or 3 weeks through that time where that information that's relevant that you have to get very quickly. They were there for that first week, maybe the second week. Then we never saw them again. Right. So we knew who they were. Those guys, they were quickly moving through, videoing, asking questions, beating, electrocution, gone. Those guys just went, and then we were left with what they introduced themselves to us as our social workers. So, wow. Yeah. So then we were dealing with the same guys, but they were okay. They'd give us cigarettes and water, and they knew we were suffering at that first prison. They knew we were malnourished. We weren't eating. But these guys were the guys that were getting us to call home, so we couldn't do anything. And they were quite reasonable. They were helping us help them. So, if we wanted to get home, they were explaining to us that, we need your help to get you home, And it was quite interesting how they were working the British media as well. So they were working the British media, so they'd ask questions and get to ask questions, and then watch the British media do all the dirty work and send it back, and they'd read every article that was printed about you, every single one. And if they weren't happy with something, they'd come and talk to you again, but in reference to what was in the article, you know.
Yeah.
So they were using like British press to find information about people, which was quite interesting.
And did you ever strike up or overhear, I guess, conversation about what they thought of the conflict?
Well, yeah, they were generally, if you spoke to one guy or maybe two, you could have a conversation. They'd be interested in what London was like. You could have some dialogue with them. Why'd you come? And they're interested in your life. For me, they were a bit more understanding than me because I could speak Russian for starters. I could get by. And then also I was married to Ukrainian. So generally I wasn't like the guy who joined up after the war to come to get his adrenaline kicks and start fighting Russians. It wasn't that for me. They were quite understanding, surprisingly, that I was a part of Ukraine and I'd been there for a long time and lived in Mariupol, lost my house. And generally we struck up a good relationship at that second prison with some guards and trustees that helped us get stuff like sandals and clothes and things like this we needed. They helped us get. So, but if you got a group of them, 3, maybe, 4 people, they all talk pro Donetsk. They hate Ukraine. The war is justified. Everything's Peter, faggot. The words they use out there to describe Ukrainians. But yeah, they're constantly, you couldn't talk to them because they were just so pro Russia. It was bad. No one wanted to be seen to be sort of questioning the conflict at all. But when you got them, like I said, on their own or with another guy, they're generally quite interesting. One guy took a selfie with me in the prosecutor's office. So the prosecutor's prosecutor's in there, and you can't write this, and he's got like an understudy, like a apprentice type guy in there. And the prosecutor goes out, and the guy looks at me, and he speaks reasonable English, and he says, "Can I take a selfie?" And I'm thinking, well, if it gets out on social media, that's good for me. People are going to see me. He's going to see his face. And I'm thinking, yeah, go on in, we'll take a video. Why do you want to take a selfie? He said, no, I'm interested. You're the first English person I've ever met. And I was like, so he asked me lots of questions. At the end of it, he says, can I have a selfie? So we took a selfie, and there was a picture of him and me that he showed me. He said, what do you think of that? And there's a picture of him going, and there's a picture of me going, and I was thinking, if that gets out, I'd love to see that again. But he was just generally interested in, I never saw him again, but he just gave me a cigarette, said thanks, and made me a cup of tea, and never saw him again. But I thought if it gets out, people are going to see I'm alive. Because at that point, I didn't know, people thought I was dead. And they told me that they told everybody I was dead. So they'd taken pictures of my passport and put deceased on it. They showed me the information that they'd sent out. So it just still doesn't seem real. I'm back really after all that. But yeah.
And did you witness any of these? Oh, sorry, you can say it.
Sorry?
No, you go.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, we've got a delay. Mariupol is, the only real sort of thing I'm looking to sort of talk about with my friends and with some counselling and stuff, just to make sure that there is no hidden. Because we still get, because I was British, we get a lot of pictures taken with us by people. I can't even remember the pictures being taken by these guys, And wives and girlfriends are constantly see me and say, we love you home and congratulations, but do you know anything about this guy? And there's a picture of me standing next to him, and I can't remember, a lot of the guys I meet out there. And it's very, very sort of, I've got better at dealing with that now. But when I got back, I'm just flooded with people saying, do you know what happened to him? Do you know what happened to him? And some good news I'd had to give and some bad news I'd had to give. And we've made some people's day saying, it's last time I saw him was April, he's very much alive, and we've made some people very happy, but obviously we know some bad ones as well. So, and that's still very hard to deal with because we still get it now.
What is it about Mariupol that you think like the West hasn't known? Like, what is it that people may not understand about what happened there?
In what way?
Like, I guess I have this image built up of it was just completely the Ukrainians living underground, there wasn't that much, fight back because the Russians just overwhelmed it so quickly. And that was not my own experience.
Yeah.
That was through, taking in either, the only media there was Russian state media, really, other than some in the steelworks. But is there truth in that? Because you were saying, we were fighting back. We're in these 20-meter, close quarter battles with the Russians.
Yeah. Well, because of a military experience, I was never debriefed about what the process or what the battle picture was going to be. I sort of understood. Are you still there?
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, good. Yeah, I sort of understood that the battle picture that we straight from the off. I'd already told a journalist beforehand that we wouldn't literally fight in trenches. We wouldn't have the power to be able to do that. The trenches were quite long and big, and we were quite condensed in our military force. I was at a forward observation point, so the day they crossed, I couldn't be any further forward. The press were telling me that there was big build-ups, and we couldn't see anything until that day. We couldn't really see anything. The press were all saying, "Yeah, you're going to get attacked," and we were like, "Nope, nothing's happening yet. Just the odd artillery, the odd drone." The build-up brigade, which was to our right flank, was just getting battered with artillery. So we knew that something was going on. But really, my position didn't really come under attack until that February the 24th, which was probably the worst day ever. I thought at the time, until obviously I was captured. But it was pretty intense. So I knew straight away we'd bump and run. We call it bump and run. We'd hold them as long as we could. Then we'd go back, pull back. Somebody else would hold them, and I knew we would fight in Mariupol. I knew that from the start. Nobody needed to tell me that. This is what I mean by the different degrees of experience within the platoons in Ukraine. My battalion was pretty good. There were some good guys in my battalion, but we'd actually got a lot of new guys that really hadn't experienced anything like this before. Fit lads, motivated lads, but this was all new to them. So I knew we were going to go and bump and run, go back straight away and defend Mariupol. What I thought would happen was we would get relief, or they would keep corridors open. What I didn't plan on doing was that we would get surrounded. And we still don't know the full details of what happened. I know they tried to get in. I've spoken to people and said they tried to get supplies in, but they didn't get the supplies in. Then they lost the corridor, and we were surrounded then. And then straight away, me and my boss knew straight away that this was going to be about holding and drawing resources from Russia and the DPR for as long as we could. And we knew, as soon as we were in Mariupol and we were surrounded, we knew we could be there until our death. We knew that. Everybody knew that this was going to be the worst case scenario. My wife, I gave her a death message. Well, it wasn't really a death message. I sort of said, look, I think this is it. We're surrounded. The battle's caught up with us. I think either I'm going to be killed or captured. So don't lose hope if you don't hear from me. But I think this would be the last call. And that was sort of early March, and I wasn't captured till early April. So we knew straight away we were there to. It's going to be a kill or capture.
Yeah,
because we just knew that they weren't getting in. We kept getting told that reinforcements were coming in, but they weren't. They were 70 kilometers away. Then they couldn't break through into or get a corridor through to Mariupol. And that's quite tough when you're fighting to get up every morning and fight a battle, knowing that at the end of it you could be there for weeks and you could be killed at the end of this or captured. It's very demanding, very demanding. I've only ever done operations like in Bosnia and Northern Ireland, and where you go on your patrols, you come back to a base, and everything's hunky dory. You've got air superiority. For me, this was new. This actual war, it was miserable. I tell everybody, what do you remember about Mariupol? It was bloody miserable. Trying to get people motivated because they knew they were in in the shit. We were surrounded. So you have to get people up every day to fight. And every day we'd come back with one less, one guy gone, you know, and we'd had no food. There was no food to come back to at some days. So you didn't have anything warm. Sleep was just interrupted all the time, every night, you know. And then we had to live underground. So we never saw the daylight for 2 weeks, you know, 2 or 3 weeks, because we were living in a sewer to try and avoid the artillery. And my boss just worked endlessly. I don't know when he slept. He probably saved so many lives just by doing what he knew how to do. Absolute trooper warrior, real leader from the word go. But he, you know, he was hot wiring JCBs, digging out positions for his guys that were having problem digging into a rail embankment. You know, he was digging all these positions for other people because he'd managed to hotwire this JCB, and the only one who could drive it. Never driven one before in his life. You know, there was outstanding things like that through you know, lots of people doing lots of exceptional things that kept us going and making life easier because we were all in it together. So that bond between us all is what drives you, you know. But it's very hard to get up every day and fight like that. And if you don't believe in what you're fighting for, then that's when you see a lot of people have problems. A lot of Westerners suffer out there because they forget why they go. They want to go and help, and then it's not their country. And why am I here, sort of thing. For me, we'd never lost the faith or the belief that this is why we come to fight. This is my home for my community, you know. They'd already bombed a school near us on the way in at Saadoun, which was, I managed to get on video to, I think it was to Channel 4, which was probably a mistake at the time because they used that on me when I got to Donetsk. But that sort of raised the profile of me. I'd spent 4.5 years being under the radar. Nobody knew who I was until sort of Seabreeze. And then they, when we'd done Seabreeze, then they sort of knew who I was. They targeted my wife, who works for an NGO. And then I was on everybody's radar. So it's very, you've got to have that belief in what you're doing to actually get through mentally okay, I think. And that's where I'm at. I still firm believer that you can't trust Russia at the moment. I still believe that we should give all the aid we can to Ukraine because they won't stop at Ukraine. When I was there, they were talking about invading Poland next. They want to go into Transnistria, upset Romania. They're not going to stop with Ukraine if they come to Ukraine. You could, you know, when I tell English guys, the Brits, you know, if you bury your head in the sand, you're literally just going to wait until they turn up at your door. You know, which is why Sweden's now getting involved, Finland's getting involved, and the world's getting involved because they just will not stop. They will just keep going. He wants the old Soviet Union back, plain and simple. It's a land grab. But for me, what I've seen him do is the only thing he's done is take a really cracked, divided Europe at the time before the war started and brought them all closer together. I think Putin's foreign policy has been a disaster, really.
Yeah.
You know, I just think Ukraine has now got, you know, the longer the war goes on, the more it favors Ukraine, I think. And I just hope that, you know, Putin doesn't do anything stupid, like nuclear war.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people ask me that question all the time. Of course, no one has an answer for, but you know, how people always ask me, how close are we? And I'm like, I don't know. We're either right on it or we're nowhere near it. It's how long is a piece of string? Because you could argue that at any point, even before this war, we're always on the verge of that with those weapons existing all around the world and the effectiveness of them. And it's a very hard thing, and there's so many arguments on both sides around this. Like I read my YouTube comments, and the division amongst people just seems so massive, and so passionate on both sides, and I'm like, holy shit, this is a really, really hard thing to wrap your head around of the scale of all of this. And I've been there.
Yeah,
you know, I've been there. I've been in Mariupol, and I know how large the city is, and I've been in Ukraine for a long time, and you know, I've seen some aspects of the war, and even me, it struggles to get your head around the size of what's going on, the scale of it. From your time in Mariupol, is there any like scenes or stories that really jump to your mind, like ones that are in the forefront?
Yeah, there's one I won't forget, which is coming back from Pavlopol, where we were stationed, retreating back into A friend of mine, Kostenko, was playing the piano. You might have seen it on my Facebook or whatever.
Yes.
We'd found a piano in a school while the grad was coming in, and he picked up a piano and just started playing some classical music. I had no idea he could play the piano. And the sun came out exactly at the same time. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment, because my boss said, see, soldiers can always find a light even in the darkness, you know. And he come up with this sort of saying, and unfortunately he died in his BTR around sort of early April. And the guy could speak 3 languages, had the whole world at his feet, gorgeous girlfriend, you know, could play lots of musical instruments, I was told. Became a really good friend of mine. We developed stories, and unfortunately, you know, ultimate sacrifice he paid, really. And you can't forget people like that. And I think those sorts of stories, I've got a million, but that one in particular, because it was documented, we videoed him playing the piano, and you know, he was quite an outgoing guy who you know, brought humour to the group. Was quite a hard thing to carry on after he died, you know. But he was a lovely chap. I think that and the community spirit is still very good in Mariupol with people. They still set up the group of Mariupol, so you can still talk to people. Everybody's kept in contact with everybody else, so they know where they are, and chatting and helping out as best they can. But they actually drove me through Mariupol about a month after it was captured to look at the damage that apparently we did on the steelworks. And the place was just empty. It ripped my heart out, to be honest. Places where I used to go for coffee just destroyed, you know. Shopping malls just gone, flattened. People that looked really tired just trying to pick up water wherever they could. Nothing was working. The streets were empty, but the buildings were just absolutely demolished. And I was thinking, we're never going to get that back. Community there, or anything really, it's just totally and utterly destroyed. It's going to take 10, 15 years to even get that anywhere near where it was before. So for me, that really did rip my heart out. I'd spent 5 years, got married there as well. So that was very hard thing to deal with. But generally, there's a million of these stories that everybody can tell. You probably heard them yourself, that everybody's got these stories. And one of the things I told my parents when I said, look, I'm staying in Mariupol, I'm fighting, was that people have got so much more to lose. We had a section commander who was in charge of 8 guys. Who's his name eludes me now, Big Demon, we used to call him, but he's an amazing man, solid man. Not only was he dealing with his 8 guys, Kherson had got taken while he was on deployment in Mariupol, so he was dealing with the surrender of the surrounding of Mariupol, looking after his 8 guys, and trying to contact his wife in Kherson and family in Kherson that were in now occupied Russia. One of the times I saw him, he just went, I don't know what to say. I don't know where he got his energy from, but he was still doing that up until the very end, you know, still trying to push. We've got to be strong. You know, people like that you hear every day. Another guy was amazing, you know. And you feed off this when you're in that situation, thinking, well, it ain't too bad for me at the moment. My family's in England, you know. Yeah. And you feed off their positivity. I mean, they didn't crumble. They just carried on. Can't get in touch with his family because his family are in Kherson. He's got his 8 guys. You can't control the uncontrollables, you know. So he's dealing with that first, and then dealing with that second. It's amazing stories I've got of so many people out there.
And what was the fate of himself?
I don't know. I think he's captured, still a POW.
Okay.
Again, he's still out there, so it's very difficult. I can't even speak to his family to let them know I've seen him, but I've seen a picture of him alive. Somebody sent me a picture of him alive, but he's still a POW. So,
okay.
But there's a lot of my 36th Graders still are, so I'm hoping they'll get released soon. You know, I'm just praying they'll get released soon because they've been in quite a long time. So.
Yeah. Have you struggled with any sort of like survivor's guilt from, you know, you said 60% of your battalion, I think you said, was killed. Have you struggled with any of
Someone asked me that the other day.
Yeah.
And I said no. I said, because I'd gone
As you
through
shouldn't,
stabbings, shootings. I'd done it all with them. I'd worked hard. The decision to release me, I'm still not under sure how, why, or under the sort of conditions that we were released. So, you know, I don't feel, I'm still working on trying to get other people out. But survivor's guilt, no. I knew we got the death penalty. The Ukrainians won't get the death penalty. Generally, they've just got to stay alive and hold out. You know, we'd put through the mill. We'd been on the world news. We'd been used as propaganda tools. I think it'd have been if we'd have been treated exactly the same, maybe. Why me? But generally, I knew we'd all been run through the mill with the media and the world, and you know. So no, not really. And I'd done all I could in Mariupol with my team, and they told give me good feedback. You know, the guys that have come out and who have got out, and so. Not really, no. I've not really suffered from that. Just got to try and keep shouting and get the boys out.
Yeah. And while you're in, did you witness any of these like alleged sort of war crimes or mistreatment of people other than yourself from the Russians?
I didn't witness any, but people told me stories. Like talking a guy from an Azov guy that joined us in our level in the second prison. And we were just talking about the electronic shocks over the wall. He said, well, count yourself lucky, because he had his attached to his testicles.
Fuck.
And then we just went, oh, things became a lot better that day. So, you know, and we'd heard reports, but no, I didn't see any. We'd heard reports that some people had died through the interrogation phase, but we don't know for certain. But while I was out there, obviously the POW camp got hit by a bomb, or they're saying it may be an incendiary device. I don't know the outcome of that, but that was quick to go around, you know, our prison.
Yeah,
you know, watch yourself, because it could be done here too.
Yeah. And what's next for yourself? Where do you go from here?
I don't know. I'm still thinking about what I'm going to do. I'm going to help Ukraine in another way. I want to tell the story. One of the things we prayed for was to get out, so I'm able to tell the story about what actually happened to us at Mariupol. I don't think many people are going to really know. And being British out there, we've got a platform to be able to tell that story and use the Ukrainians to obviously help support that story as an authentic story of what happened to Mariupol. Because not many people are going to know what happened, and we're still piecing it together. So I think doing interviews with yourself and people like you, maybe a book later today, maybe do something to keep that pressure and that Ukraine in the public eye, to keep them, you know, keep that pressure and momentum going, and that support that Ukraine are getting. It's essential that they get it. I mean, UK, all I wake up to every morning is problems with the budget and COVID, and you know, now that's taken over, and I want to get that Ukraine back into the frame, really, of what it should be more important. Nuclear war should be more important than COVID, you know, and our Prime Minister messing up the budget. You know, it should be more important than that, because without, you know, if that kicks off, you know, who knows what we won't have a budget or any problem with COVID. So, you know, we want to keep that momentum going. Definitely tell the story of Ukraine and Mariupol from our perspective. But yeah, I don't know really. I'm still finding out what I want to do. But you know, it's brought, like I said, it's brought all our family closer together, and friends. Sorry, the dog's kicking off. Someone's ringing the door.
That's all right, mate.
But yeah, it's you know, still just trying to find out what I really want to do. No idea yet, really.
Yeah. Oh, mate, there's no rush, I guess. No rush for it. And I guess this has given you a bit of a different perspective on life, maybe, and you know, you probably walk forward from here in different shoes almost, from being that close to death.
I'm gonna have 2 birthdays next year, that's for sure. So gonna have my 22nd of September, and then my birthday's actually the 27th, so I'm gonna celebrate 2 birthdays for sure.
Oh yes. Bloody oath, mate. And sort of finishing up, what should people know about Ukraine that might not be being spoken in the media?
I don't hear it enough. Ukraine didn't invade Russia, you know. People talk about the war like it's we should give up the lands of Donetsk and Donbass. You know, we should give up those places and talk peace. I tell them no. You know, I'll stick to those guns. No, you know, Ukraine didn't invade Russia. There's no reason why they should give up those lands. If they still have the war to fight, you know, they should fight for them. You know, it's down to Russia to make some moves about peace and show some commitment with this, you know, and that would be my stand. Ukraine is on the other side. Ukraine is a beautiful place. You know, it's amazing climate. Summers are amazing. There's nothing like summers in Ukraine. Kiev is a beautiful city. Before the war, you know, my parents came to visit Kiev. They loved it. Had no idea it was like that. So many different parts to Ukraine as well, which is, and everybody loves borscht. You know, it's a good dish. But yeah, it's an amazing place, and like I said, like I said previously, it's a relaxing place. It's not full on.
Yeah.
So you can come back there and have a wonderful time, and we want to get it back to that situation,
Yes.
obviously. And maybe I'll going back and touch on what you said earlier. I'll probably go back to help rebuild Ukraine at some point, which is something I'd like to do and help start the rebuilding of that. But we got to get this war over with first. But yeah, I don't think it's said enough that Ukraine didn't invade Russia. You know. How can you trust a country that just keeps taking land and invading, saying it's going to do one thing and does another? You just can't trust it.
Yeah.
So.
And I have to ask, because I know I'll be pounded in the comments by it, but you know, you've spent a lot of time in Ukraine, you know, 5 years there and all through the military and all this. When someone asks or brings up but there's Nazis in Ukraine and these neo-Nazi nationalists, and you know, there's no one better to ask, I guess, than yourself, someone who spent time there, and especially being in Mariupol, which is, you know, I guess the Azov Sea, you know, that is the place people bring up. What has been your experience long term in Ukraine with that? Does it exist? Is it how is it?
I'd say, yeah, I'd be a fool to say it doesn't exist, because I've had the same questions when I was captured as well. You know, you're talking. You've got a president elected with 73% of the votes, which is a Jewish president, Jewish heritage president. There is no real problems in Ukraine regarding Nazis, and there are. You've got elements of it. It's probably less than 1% of the vote, which don't have any impact on Parliament or anything like that. Just guys, if they do this and they're not breaking any laws, they're going to tell us what we're defending. As long as they're legal and not breaking any laws, freedom of speech and your opinions, this is what we're defending in Ukraine. What I would say is that you know, a lot's changed since 2014. Azov wasn't the Azov to which people refer. It wasn't the Azov as 2014. It's very much been brought into the fold. It's very much a soft unit, very good fighting unit. A lot of the guys I met are not Nazis, just want to fight with good gear. And if you're a soldier, you know you want to fight with good gear, and my enemy is my friend. So, you know, generally people want to fight with good funding, good gear, people that they know they're going to fight with, they're going to fight. And, you know, Azov and Mariupol did that, and they're considered heroes in Mariupol, you know. They took back Mariupol, and there wouldn't be a Mariupol or any of the advances made in that area if it wasn't for Azov and a group of guys with guns going in and taking on the DPR. So it's a very, I would say it is there in certain parts, but you know, but very small amount. I've never seen much of it, really. Don't see any of it, to be honest. Not the way the media goes on about it, Russia portrays it. Don't really see any of it at all. It's a very it's another narrative that's driven by Russian media to justify the cause of going into somewhere like Mariupol in Ukraine, to denazify it, the journalist told me, the Russian journalist, or Nazi cleansing. But it goes back to what I said to you. It's no more than ethnic cleansing of Ukrainians in Ukraine, which is, so if you speak to any Ukrainian, that's been going on for 100 years,
Yes.
more. Russians have been doing that for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, no, I don't see any real problems with it. I don't have any dealings with it. There are some people that have that ideology, but really, I don't really generally talk to them.
Yeah.
But it's a minority,
And
very small minority.
Yeah, and you say, the ethnic cleansing of Ukrainians by Russians, the pro-Russian mindset would be, or at least like the Telegram chats would say that Ukrainian soldiers and Azov and whatever have been, doing an ethnic cleansing of Russians in the Donetsk region for the past 8 years. That's what they would say. What would you say to that? Or is that just not correct?
I've not come across the same situation. I've had some in-depth conversations with one DPR soldier who fought at Debovsv back in the day, who was very much pro-Russian. First of all, I'd like to think that we treat the soldiers better in Ukraine than we do the way I was treated. The lack of food is just horrendous. I've seen some of the pictures coming out of the variance of the degree of soldiers that have been captured by Ukraine and what looks like the soldiers that are captured, including myself, was in one of the videos of how we looked after we were captured by the Russians and the Donetsk People's Republic. So visibly, I can see the difference in the treatment of prisoners. Generally, I think the consensus is that there are a lot of people that can't say anything in Donetsk, and Lugansk and Donbass in itself. There are a lot of people that can't get out. Having spoken to soldiers and members of Azov, they have families still trapped there. They got out and identify as Ukrainian, but they are still fighting their brothers who have been conscripted, family that have been conscripted in by. So they're very much, from what I hear, is that they're being forced into this war and being conscripted into this war with brothers really fighting brothers. It's a bad situation, family fighting family, only just based on geography. One got out and one didn't. And you can hear stories, lots and lots of these stories, especially in areas of Mariupol, where a lot of guys still have family in Donetsk. But they can't get out. And I think if you liberated Donetsk, you would then have a lot of people be thankful for that.
But what I guess these guys are making out, they're making out as if the Ukrainians did liberate Donetsk, that there would be some sort of repercussions for those in Donetsk, just civilians who wanted to be Russian.
Yeah, I don't think that's. I think that you won't get that case. I think really, my opinion is you've got so many families. Generally, in war zones like Bosnia and here, civilians are generally fickle anyway, because they generally don't know if 1 minute they're going to be Ukrainian, or 1 minute they're going to be Russian. Same in Bosnia, same in. So I'd never blame the civilians for ever sort of not wanting to cooperate with one side fully than the other. They just try and stay neutral. It's quite normal for that situation to develop, because people say, well, you think they'd be cheering Ukraine coming in. Hold on a minute. 2 minutes ago, they were Russian. We might pull back and then they'll be Russian again.
Yeah.
And people are getting shot for helping both sides. So you can't really expect civilians in those hotspots to really show their true colors to anybody until they know for certain that they're safe. And then generally you'll find that they are ecstatic to be liberated.
Yes.
And I think that would be the case for Donetsk as well. I think there's a lot of subdued voices, and being in a prison and talking to people over there, I think there's definitely splits within that system over there. Lots of political prisoners that are unhappy. And, Ukraine should fall back to Ukraine. You should argue that point democratically, not take up arms and start making your own decision that we're going to be a republic. because the whole thing was funded by Russia, pushed by Russia. You know, it's been proven their soldiers were in Russia in 2014, 15, 16. They're supporting feeding this republic idea and you know, separatist idea. So really, no, I think it's crap, really, that what they're saying about that, the Russians. I think he wants the industry, he wants the money from that area, and he wants that, especially the ports and the link to, you know, from Mariupol to Odessa. He'd love all that coast around there.
Yeah,
we've said that for 5 years, and that's all he wants.
Yeah. It takes one look at a map to go how important that land. If you could land bridge
how
between,
important is that?
Yeah, 1 second you look at a map and go, yeah, look, here's Russia, here's Crimea, and here's Odessa through to Moldova. Well, yeah, if I were, that's what I'd want as well. Yeah, if I was invading that country.
Yeah. It's the rest is just shit. The rest is just crap. The narratives, the Nazis, the terrorists, and the Kherson Bridge. I was like, hold on a minute, you started a war. How can that be an act of terrorism? It's a strategic target, you know.
Well, you could say they blew up. You could argue that Ukraine blew up their own bridge as well.
Yeah. Yeah, technically, yeah. It's just crazy. I mean, the way they're rewriting the English dictionary on mercenary and terrorist very, very quickly, you know. Even the lawyer, Brahim, the Moroccan, had a DPR lawyer who just went, I don't understand this, what's been happening. He said, this word, mercenary, you're not mercenaries, you're contracted soldiers with Ukraine. He said, I don't understand this. And then he come back later and said, it's from the top. I can't do anything about this. I don't think I'll get the verdicts changed. And even he was sort of saying, I'm struggling to deal with this version of mercenary because it just doesn't fit the meaning, you know. So the narrative's just changing just to fit. He just wants that area. I think this narrative is just thrown out to the press and the media, you know. And it's changing every day. So it really sounds like he's backed into a corner. He's made Russia look very weak financially, I think, personally. And military, they're not the army everyone thought they were.
No, well, you and I, coming from Western armies, you know, I've worked with the Brits a lot. We thought that they were a near-peer enemy, you know, like a near-peer nation. You know, Western professional military, we were like, yeah, you know, this is who we're going up against. All the Australian tactics and with the Brits and the Marines and all this was all developed to fight a near-peer enemy of Russia. And seeing it go down and, you know, and credit to the Ukrainians, but the Ukrainian army is not the British or the American by scale or by training of at least on a broad scale. And seeing the Russians being dominated in some areas, and you're like, oh, right, okay. The training we did was almost Western propaganda, because the Western intel must have known that they were not that good. Like, you know, that CIA sort of level. You'd have think. Yeah, you'd have thought. You'd think. And they must go, yeah, but you're way better off saying to your soldiers, you're better off saying to those British grunts and these Royal Marines going, hey, yeah, they are this good. This is why we're funding billions of dollars and this and that. And it's like, they're just not. I look at them like, if you tried to touch NATO, you'd get fucking wiped off the face of the earth.
And I think they know that now. I think it's why they're abandoning the nuclear weapon threat. You know, it's got nothing left. He's the rat in a corner, really, which is quite dangerous in itself.
I believe Putin was lied to as well. I think now Putin, he's not there witnessing the training of individual soldiers or the maintenance of individual armoured vehicles. I think that his generals have told him, your Navy is the best in the world, your Air Force is all this and whatever, like, you know, we would think. And I think when he's gone, oh, yeah, this is what we're doing. And it's been like, what do you fucking mean? It's not like, what? It just doesn't make sense. And it's a house of cards that I think is crumbled after the 48 hours, you know, the 72 hours it was meant to take Ukraine. And like you said, you know, you expected in that prison to have no Ukraine left. You know, I remember on the 24th, on the 23rd, I was in Mariupol, and on the 24th, I was in Kramatorsk. And I thought, well, in the next 24 hours, there's tanks rolling down this street, and there's going to be Russian flags in every single one of these buildings. And anyone who didn't think that, was silly, was, you know, was naive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And anyone who
Yeah.
says they didn't think that now is lying, because at the time everyone was like, yeah, like, you know.
It's just going to collapse from yeah. And I'm still catching up with that period of like between March and when I started to get some news about June or July.
Yeah.
And I'm still reading books now about people have published about, you know, that time, individual views at that time, which is gone for me. But yeah, he said the same thing in the book. You know, we thought they were just going to come crashing through and advance at that speed all the way through to Kiev, and Kiev was under attack. And so you can imagine our celebrations in the prison when we went, no, they won the Battle of Kiev. Yeah. And Odessa, they didn't get off the beach. We were like in prison going, yeah. You know, there is a Ukraine. My wife's safe. Everything's okay. Yeah. We're going to, you know, they're holding. So, you know, we were ecstatic.
I bet, mate. I remember I was in Kharkiv.
Oh, yeah.
I was in Kharkiv on late April, May-ish time. And in April, you could see the Russian positions. You could see them getting hit and things coming in. And this is you're within that ring road of Kharkiv. You can see these positions and they've crossed the ring road and this and that. And you're like, oh, fucking hell. Like, I can see them. They're coming here. Like, that's the Russian military. And then, you know, I went back to somewhere. I was filming for a week or two. I came back to Kharkiv. Like, oh, no, you can. I'm like, oh, I want to go to, like, most of my fixtures. Oh, there's nothing there anymore. And I'm like, oh, what do you mean? He's like, oh, no, we can drive straight through there. We can go through all the old positions you were seeing get hit. And I was like, what? Like, unbelievable. I was dumbfounded that it was like, oh, I thought there was no stopping that once it was coming.
Yeah. Most definitely, yeah. And my main concern was my wife, where she lived and where she moved. I didn't even know where she was for sort of 4 or 5 months. I had no idea. We hadn't talked from March. My first conversation with her was about September, middle of September. So we hadn't spoken I had no idea where she was, if she was alive. She was already talking about preparing Molotov cocktails and taking on each Russian individually by herself. You know, she's like that sort of Ukrainian fight in her, you know. It's like, she's an amazing woman. She just said to me on the phone when I was in Mariupol, when I gave her that call, just survive, you know. I thought she was going to break down and cry. She didn't. She just went, survive. You've brought the world's attention to Mariupol. You've brought the world's attention to this fight now. You boys are doing an amazing job. It still sends goosebumps up and down my body, you know, from that conversation. And my wife's not crying. She's actually screaming at me just to survive and keep fighting down there, and which was inspiring. And my friend Dima just turned around and said, what'd she say? And I went, she just told us to keep fighting. you know? Was it a good call? Yeah, it was a good call. Yeah.
Fuck, mate. I actually, you know, you and I knew each other before the war, you know, through social media, through the invasion. And I didn't actually know that video of the playing the piano was actually yourself. Well, I didn't know you'd filmed it.
Yeah, it was me that filmed the piano, and Dima Kostenko's the guy playing the piano.
Yeah.
It was my platoon. We're just on the Statana, and we were just being in a school. We just helped people move stuff out of school because Grad had just taken out of school. It was lucky there was no one in there, but all the coats and stuff and bags were still hanging up from the kids all in there. And it was just chance that nobody was actually in there. They'd actually left the building, but the whole school was just Graded. And it just while we were getting out the Grad and holding the crossroads, he just found this piano. So I won't ever forget it. And every time I play it to someone, everyone just breaks down and cries. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty emotional time, like for us. So, but yeah, it's really very sad. He won't ever be forgotten, though. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sean, where can people find you to continue to follow yourself?
Well, I'm on Instagram, snowy_UA. I just keep my Facebook really for sort of close friends and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll be doing some things with the British Army, I hope, soon and stuff. But you can catch me on Instagram and I'll put bits and snippets up there of what I'm doing and what's happening. And probably get more so now that we've had some time to rest and recuperate, because now I'm getting itchy feet.
Yeah.
I want to get back into doing something now. So, but no, I've really enjoyed chatting to you, to be honest.
Mate, no, pleasure is mine. I can't thank you enough for coming on and telling the story. And we originally were talking about coming out and seeing you, out at in the Donbass region, and now we've come to being in Australian Britain, talking to each other after a lifetime of experience between us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, it's good to speak with you,
mate. Thank you very much, and there's always an open invitation to come on and talk about things as you go, and if you get things down in a book and everything, we'd love to talk about it more and read it and go for it, man.
I'd love to.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very much, and I look forward to you meeting up with your wife and seeing her. That'll be fantastic.
Oh yeah, I can't wait. I so can't wait. It's going to be amazing. Really emotional.
Oh,
so somebody said, "How are you going to take it?" I said, "I'm going to cry like a kid dropping his ice cream." I think it's going to be quite an emotional time when we meet. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, have a great time, mate. Thanks again. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah, see you, mate. Bye.